Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day today. So we are finishing up chapter 5 today. We're talking about motor development theories, and so here we go. According to Gallahue and his colleagues, the study of motor development can be undertaken from both a process and a product approach. From the process perspective, motor development involves the study of the underlying biological, environmental, and task demands that influence change in motor behavior from infancy through older adulthood. From the product perspective, motor development may be regarded as descriptive or normative change over time and is typically viewed as age-related changes in motor behavior and motor performance. The study of motor development today emphasizes consideration of a multitude of factors that influence all aspects of development across the lifespan. Development is a highly interrelated process. The study of motor development must not be undertaken in isolation, but rather grounded in the study of the total development process of humans across the lifespan. It requires consideration of the interaction of both the cognitive and affective domains of behavior on motor development, as well as the impact of a vast array of individual and environmental factors. The study of motor development should focus on what individuals of all ages and abilities can do. Gallahue developed and continues to refine an hourglass model, seen here in figure 5.4, to illustrate how development is a continuous process, beginning at conception and continuing throughout the lifespan, ceasing at death. In our hourglass is the stuff of life, or sand. He views sand entering our hourglass from two containers, which symbolize the hereditary and environmental contributions to the process of development. The heredity container has a lid, reflecting that at conception our genetic makeup is determined. Thus, the amount of sand in that container is fixed. The second container, the environment, has no lid. Thus, more sand can be added to it from the environment and sand poured into our hourglass. During the early reflexive, which is in utero to about 1 year of age, and rudimentary movement, which is birth to 2 years of age, phases of motor development, the sand pours into the hourglass primarily from the hereditary container. During the first 2 years of life, the sequential progression of motor development is highly predictable. For example, with the rudimentary movements, children learn to sit before they stand and stand before they walk. However, there is considerable variability in the rates at which children acquire these rudimentary skills. This variability in motor skill acquisition occurs throughout life. Motor skill acquisition is enhanced when individuals, infants, children, adolescents, and adults receive additional opportunities for practice, encouragement, and instruction in an environment conducive to learning. When these opportunities are absent or limited, acquisition of motor skills is inhibited. The rate of acquisition is also influenced by the nature and the requirements of the task. During the fundamental movement phase, which is ages 2 to 7 years of age, children began to develop the fundamental movement skills such as running, jumping, throwing, catching, and kicking. The acquisition of these fundamental skills can be described as moving through separate but somewhat overlapping stages: the initial, emerging, elementary, and proficient. We'll talk about those a little bit later. Encouragement, instruction, and plentiful opportunities for practice are crucial for children to move through these stages. Acquisition of specialized movement skills from about 7 to 10 and older is influenced by the attainment of mature fundamental skills. Specialized motor skills are developed, refined, and combined. These skills are used for activities of daily living, recreational activities, and sports. These skills have improved form, greater accuracy, and better control than the fundamental motor skills. Fundamental motor skills encompass a broad range of skills that form the foundation for successful participation in games, sports, dance, and fitness activities. These skills can be categorized into locomotor, non-locomotor, and manipulative skills. Locomotor skills are those in which the body moves through space, including running, jumping, and sliding. Non-locomotor skills, or axial movements, are typically done from a relatively stationary position, using a stable base of support. generally performed in place. Non-locomotor skills include bending, stretching, and pushing. Manipulative skills are skills used in handling objects. Throwing, catching, striking, and kicking are examples of manipulative skills. Fundamental motor skills are combined to create the specialized movement necessary in many activities. For example, the softball throw requires a combination of sliding, a locomotor skill, and throwing, a manipulative skill, as well as twisting, which is a non-locomotor skill. The triple jump in track is a combination of a hop, step, and jump. Other specialized sports skills require more complex combinations of movements. Locomotor skills refer to those skills that enable individuals to move themselves from one point to another. The following locomotor skills are discussed: walking, running, and jumping from a distance and height, hopping, leaping, skipping, sliding, and galloping. These are the skills most commonly used by elementary school children. Opportunities for students to explore and use these skills by themselves and in combination with non-locomotor movements create a sufficient foundation for more complex movement skills. Non-locomotor skills are generally performed using a stable base of support. The non-locomotor movement skills discussed are bending, stretching, twisting, turning, pushing, pulling, and swinging. Generally, they are performed in place and can be done from a variety of body positions, whether standing or sitting. They can also be combined with locomotor movements. Manipulative skills involve the propulsion and control of objects. The body is used to apply force to an object and to absorb force when receiving or controlling an object. The manipulative skills of throwing, catching, kicking, and striking are briefly described. Fundamental motor skills are the foundation for the development of specialized game, sport, dance, and physical activities. These activities are the building blocks for the future. Acquisition of skills for lifetime participation begins with the mastery of these fundamental motor skills. All children, the skilled and unskilled, need sufficient opportunities and a variety of experiences to master these important movement basics. So the rate of progress in developing these skills is going to vary from each individual. And several fundamental motor skills can be combined to create a specialized movement necessary in any activity. And lack of development of fundamental skills may hinder future participation in activities. Motor development specialists are interested in children's acquisition of fundamental motor skills. Two ways that skill development has been studied are through the sequences approach and through the use of the dynamical systems model. In studying the development of these skills, researchers have used a process or a product approach. The process approach describes how a movement is performed, such as whether or not the child performing the overhand throw steps toward the target with the foot opposite the throwing arm. The focus is described how the movement was performed, and the descriptions of common movement patterns placed along a continuum of sorts ranging from inefficient and ineffective to effective and efficient patterns of movement. The product approach focuses on the outcome of the movement, such as how far was the ball kicked, whether or not a target was hit, or was the basket made or not. The developmental sequences approach to understanding how fundamental motor skills are acquired involves placing descriptions of the common movement patterns of each skill on a continuum of sorts, ranging from the inefficient and ineffective patterns to efficient and proficient patterns of movement. Stages or steps along the continuum help identify where each child is in relation to developing the proficient form of the skill. These stages are referred to as initial, emerging, elementary, and proficient. The initial stage, stage 1, is the most inefficient and marks the beginning efforts of performance of the fundamental skill. This stage is often characterized by poor spatial and temporal integration of movements comprising this skill. The movements exhibit improper sequencing of parts of the skill. Little body rotation, sometimes exaggerated use of the body, poor rhythm, and difficulties in coordination. The emerging elementary stage can encompass multiple stages, 2 through 4, with the number of these stages depending on the developmental sequence and specific skill. These emerging stages reflect the time needed to develop different aspects of the skill being learned. In this stage, we see greater control and rhythmical coordination of the movements. The spatial and temporal elements of the movements are better synchronized, and the movement is better coordinated. The movements are still restricted or exaggerated, and the mechanical principles are not consistently applied to the performance. The proficient or final stage, stage 5, reflects the mechanically efficient performance of the skill. This stage is marked by increased mechanical efficiency, enhanced coordination, and improved control of the movements. Increases in size and strength contribute to greater force production. The developmental sequences approach can focus either on the total body sequences or the component sequences. The total body sequences method of studying development involves describing the movement patterns for the body and then, based on that description, making a determination of the child's stage of development. The component sequences approach describes how the movements of critical segments of the body, like the legs or arms, change as the child becomes more proficient. With respect to the overhand throw, the total body sequence approach, shown here in figure 5-6, illustrates how the movement patterns of the body change as proficiency is achieved. As the child becomes more proficient, there is greater mechanical efficiency, greater preparation for the throw, with the throwing arm and opposite leg working in opposition, greater trunk rotation, more force generation, and the incorporation of a follow-through. The component sequences approach for the overhand throw focuses on the changes in the 5 critical components of the skill: the step, arm, backswing, trunk, humerus, and forearm. Critical development characteristics are then assessed to determine what stage is being exhibited. In terms of the overhand throw, for the component of trunk rotation, there are 3 developmental steps. Step 1, no trunk rotation or forward back movement. Step 2, upper trunk rotation or total block rotation, with the trunk moving as a whole unit. And step 3, differentiated rotation with the trunk segments moving in sequence. The developmental level of the child would then be rated as to whether he or she was at step 1, 2, or 3 for this particular component. All the components would be rated to create a comprehensive picture of the child's development of this particular skill. As discussed earlier in the chapter, dynamical systems theory explains that movements are influenced by the interaction of the individual, task, and environment. In essence, these factors influence the movement pattern children exhibit. For example, if the task is to kick a ball a certain distance, the child selects a movement pattern to accomplish the task. In this scenario, even if the child is at the proficient stage of kicking, if asked to kick a ball a short distance, the child may choose to use a movement pattern that is not as efficient, but yet capable of accomplishing the task. When asked to kick the ball at a much further distance, the child may display a more efficient and proficient pattern that will enable the task to be accomplished. Therefore, one of the goals of motor development is to provide children with a wide array of movement options from which they can select to accomplish a particular task. This is just giving you an example of the dynamical systems and kicking performance. You can see the environment is, the goal is of course to kick a ball, but the environment could be the size of the ball. And if you have someone who is just learning, you want to give them a bigger ball because it'll help with their accuracy in kicking the ball. The distance from the target, how far that distance is, and are they stationary or is the ball moving? Those are big factors with kicking, as well as the individual. Are they motivated? Do they want to kick the ball? Do they have prior experience? Do they have the coordination required to kick the ball? So they have to be able to stand on one foot while, of course, the other foot is going through the motion. And then the task. Are they required to kick for distance? Are they required to kick for accuracy? Are they going against a goalie? The development of proficiency in the fundamental motor skills is enhanced when plentiful opportunities for practice are involved, along with instruction and encouragement opportunities that will be available through a developmentally appropriate quality elementary physical education program. Elementary physical educators have a critical role in the development of competency in the fundamental motor skills. Spesato, Gabbard, and Valentini studied the relationship of motor competence and body mass index, or BMI, on elementary school children's physical activity during physical education classes. They found that motor competence was related to the amount of physical activity engaged in by students, but there was no significant relationship between BMI and physical activity. The researchers suggest that children who are competent in motor skills are more active during class. Developing motor competency, especially for children with high BMI, can influence their participation in further skill development. Additionally, failure to acquire the proficient form of the skill adversely impacts the development of more specialized skills in the later years. Sports specialization is a growing trend in youth sports, both globally and in the United States. Sports specialization is the focusing on a single sport at an early age to the exclusion of participation in other sports or activities. Sports specialization typically involves year-round training, often including playing on multiple teams in the selected sport, and usually involves engaging in high-level competitions throughout the year. Professionals have raised concerns that sports specialization increases youth risk for overuse injuries and burnout. With respect to motor development, one of the concerns is that youth who specialize early in a sport may not develop competency and a wide variety of fundamental motor skills. And that concludes our discussion in Chapter 5. We will be moving on to Chapter 6, where we'll be talking more along the lines of biomechanics. I look forward to talking to you then. You guys have a great day today.